I never did anything to harm my daughter or my granddaughter.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Oh, man.
Casey Anthony's Parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On, the podcast about other podcasts and also about true crime, pop culture, journalism. And this week, we'll take a look at the white-collar biomedical crime podcast, The Dropout. Plus, we'll rewind the Ted Bundy Tapes, Netflix's new docuseries featuring the charismatic serial killer in his own words. Joining me to get that done and a whole lot more is my real-life husband and true crime co-author, former TV journalist Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin. Also with us is journalist, true crime author, former defense investigator, licensed private investigator, and our favorite certified cat lady, Laura Bricker. Hello, Laura.
Hello. Yeah, my cats, they have the spring fever. We've had 2 days of like 50 to 60 degree weather here. I went out to my car this morning. There is a big fat rat right next to my car.
Oh.
Excuse me, a mouse. It wasn't a rat, but it scared me like it was a rat. And I took a picture of it and someone said, you really should have outlined it with chalk when you took the picture.
Tape.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And finally with us is our captain of woke cynicism, the author behind the noir novels known as the City Trilogy, and our Patreon book club host, Toby Ball. Hello, Toby.
Hello, Rebecca. That was the best I could do.
That was very good. I now take you very seriously as the world's youngest self-made male billionaire.
Yeah, that's right. Buy my thing.
Well, a couple of quick notes I want to bring up. I have decided what we're going to be discussing next week.
Oh, you have?
We're going to be discussing Conviction, the new podcast series from Gimlet.
Okay.
Which people say is really good. Laura Bricker's been listening to it, right, Laura?
I have been. And you know what? By the time I finish, I will have dropped about 20 pounds from rage walking because it is so rage-inducing to listen to.
I like those ones.
Can't wait.
I'm so sick of this bro bullshit.
No,
I never said it was bro bullshit. I've been so misinterpreted.
He listens to Phil Collins, Toby.
People were jumping all over me and Kevin for not supporting you in your like bro criticism.
Well, let's be real.
Bros suck.
Were we surprised that the two of you did not agree with Laura and I about what we heard? I mean, we're allowed to hear what we hear, right, guys?
I don't know, Rebecca. You tell me what to say. But I will say he... Just kidding. He's super macho, but you know what? It's like kind of like listening to a Robert Parker book come to life, like Spencer in the Bronx.
All right. Can't wait.
So you'll like it.
Remember Spencer for Hire, the TV show, Kevin?
Yeah, Robert Urich was.
So good looking.
Isn't that based on Spencer?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, one other thing that I want to mention. We, Kevin Flynn and I, are moving our podcast, Married with Podcast. It is now available for those who support the show on Patreon.
What?
So if you want to hear, in addition to Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, if you want to hear Kevin and I get super personal, talk about our personal lives, and answer listener questions about marriage, work, kids, relationships, life, sex, pets.
We go there.
We do. We go there. You can support the show on patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia, and you will have access to our back catalog and our future catalog of Married with Podcast, which I'm sorry, Laura and Toby and Kevin, sitting here right now. It's honestly my favorite thing that we make. I'm sorry, it just is.
Okay, good night, everybody.
It's basically therapy for me.
Well, I have to say, I was so excited this week. I was like, wow, all these people are suddenly supporting Patreon to get in my rage walking group. And then I was like, oh, no, they're not. I'm like the ugly stepchild. They're just getting me as an extra bonus. And I was like, why are all these people suddenly signing up? So I think a lot of people want to hear about your sex life.
They do.
I mean,
they do.
You know.
There's not a lot of sex. We only had that one episode where we kind of went there. It was not sexy.
Because that was the last time. I think it was November, right? It's around Thanksgiving. I remember it well. Can I say one thing?
Sure.
We had a lot of sex.
We did. Do you think our listeners need to know that?
This is Married with Podcast. They want to know about the married stuff.
You put it in.
I got it in. I don't want to say I got it in everywhere, but I did more than once. And look, let's be real here. You know, when you are you're not in your 20s and you're a couple, things get in the way, and you don't get to be intimate.
Like your big fat bellies?
Yeah, big fat bellies. So this is a podcast that previously had been available on Stitcher Premium.
Correct.
So what about our listeners who signed up for Stitcher Premium because they wanted to hear that podcast?
If you signed up for Stitcher Premium only to hear Married with Podcast and you've recently renewed your Stitcher Premium subscription, send us an email at marriedwithpodcast@gmail.com or crimewriterson@gmail.com. Just send me a note. I'll respond to it. We'll make it right.
Yeah.
But we also are still offering, these are their stories.
Yeah, there's still a benefit if you subscribe to Stitcher Premium. These are their stories. Will be available a week early and commercial free.
Yep.
And there just may be some additional
Stitcher
content
Premium stuff coming
that might be of interest to you. Plus, you get access to all the other Stitcher Premium exclusive shows and extras and all the other stuff that you've come to love from Stitcher Premium.
That's right.
So if you're still interested in taking advantage of that service, you can go to stitcherpremium.com/crime.
Crime. Yes. And use the code crime and check out. Anyway, all right. So moving on. Kevin, let's start the show with a bang, shall we? Can you read this for me, please?
True Crime Podcast Update.
It's almost here, guys. After 3 long years, at least that I've known about this project, HBO has finally released the trailer for the long-awaited 4-part documentary series based on the story Serial Season 1 brought our way. It's called The Case Against Adnan Syed. The series will air over 4 Sundays beginning March 10th. It's directed by Amy Berg, who was nominated for an Academy Award for the 2006 documentary Deliver Us from Evil about sex abuse in the Roman Catholic Church, and who also directed and co-wrote West of Memphis about the West Memphis Three. And the trailer for The Case Against Adnan Syed, it features some characters who are very familiar and some voices that have us guessing.
When you are working on a case that you think is a wrongful conviction, you're only on one side, and that side is getting to the truth.
18-year-old Heymin Lee disappeared on January 13th. Police found her half-buried body. She had been strangled. The suspect is Adnan Syed.
It's our responsibility as investigators to consider other suspects.
Now, Adnan Syed heads back to court as questions about his case continue to surface.
This is a piece of evidence that nobody even realized existed for all these years.
I might have been the last person to see him.
I'm telling you, that's what happened. I wish I never would have talked to y'all in the first place.
Now, a press release for the series promises, quote, new discoveries, as well as groundbreaking revelations that challenge the state's case. Aided by exclusive access to Syed, the defense team, the Syed family, friends and teachers of Heymin Lee and Adnan Syed, and members of the City of Baltimore law enforcement. So, Kevin, Sunday at 9 p.m., 4 weeks in a row, that is a pretty plum time slot for this show, don't you think?
Is that right before Game of Thrones?
Uh-huh. It's airing in a spot I think that Game of Thrones will be in, right? Or is Game of Thrones on at 10?
I think it's on at... No, it's usually on at 9.
Right, so it's airing in the weeks leading up to Game of Thrones. It's starting March 10th.
Uh-huh.
And then for 4 weeks.
Ah, and then winter is coming. Got it. Okay. Okay. That's appointment viewing, though.
It's appointment viewing, and apparently it must be good because I don't think HBO would put it in that spot if it weren't. I'm just guessing.
Game of Chaudhry.
Now, is anybody surprised, Laura, you especially, to see in this trailer that there seems to be, I mean, I see guys drawing on a whiteboard. I see a shovel going into the ground.
Yeah, I like
some
the
new
shovel
investigation going on here. Did you think there was going to be some aspect of new investigation? And do you think, most importantly, we might finally hear about the damn bombshell in this documentary, whatever that might be?
That's what I actually took from it. When I saw the digging and then when I was listening, I was like, you know what? Perhaps now we're finally going to know what's going on that's so exciting that actually might change this case. So yeah, I was kind of surprised, I guess, to see another serial follow-up about Adnan's case. But at the same time, once I was watching the trailer, I'm like, well, this one looks like it's going to be pretty good. So I'm kind of interested to see what they have to say. And I want to see what they're digging up.
I think,
Literally.
I mean, I have a guess. I don't think they're digging up Heyman Lee's grave. I think what they're digging up is the area where they found the car, right? That's what it looked like in the trailer. Like they showed a picture of the car with the stuff on the tires, and it looked like they were. That's what it looked like.
20 years later, they're looking for what?
I don't know.
What are they? Yeah.
I don't know. All I know is that I was not surprised to see this project coming because I remember back when I first started working with the Undisclosed team, I don't actually tape their show anymore, but I used to be present during their tapings. And I remember once with Rabia, she used to tape the show in a closet in her house. Not like this closet, Kevin, but literally her clothing closet. And she was, I'll never forget this. She was sitting in her clothing closet and we were doing an audio check and she was having some mic issues. And I was like, okay, you want to unplug this cable and you want to try this and you want to try this. And she was like, oh, sorry. She's like, I'm sitting in my closet with a cameraman from HBO right now. It's really uncomfortable. But we weren't allowed to talk about it back then. But I guess it's out now, so we can. So, Toby, are you excited to watch this documentary and perhaps learn something that you didn't know? Maybe switch your position from being, which, by the way, established you as our resident cynic, Toby Ball, and come to the light side in the Adnan Syed case? Think that could happen?
To answer your first question, yes, I'm excited to watch it. And to answer your second question, I don't know. We'll see.
He's got to watch it first.
Right. Well, we will be talking about the documentary on this show. My guess is...
We will?
Yeah. And my guess is we're probably going to talk about it when it's done rather than week by week. But that's not 100% sure. Just because the production schedule of this show, the way that it works, that might work better for us. I haven't decided yet.
Yeah, right.
But we're definitely going to be watching it and talking about it in case anyone's wondering. And if you have thoughts, feel free to send us an email at crimewriterson@gmail.com.
I think it's really good because, we are not like the rest of the serial listening audience.
Okay.
Because, folks who are listening to our show and have been following Undisclosed, you have a much deeper understanding of the story and know more details. But so many millions of people listen to those 12 episodes of Serial, and that's the story and the case for them.
Right.
So they don't know anything about cell towers and time cards and all these other stuff. And I think a lot of them will be drawn by this high-profile prestige television treatment of the case and may be exposed to stuff that we may not be surprised about at all because we already know about it because we have been following this, right? But will be, I think, eye-opening for a lot of folks who have not checked in with the Adnan Syed case since the last episode of Serial. And then I think I'm hoping that they will also advance the story beyond, what we know and our friends have been investigating. This is a whole other investigative arm that, might be able to come up with stuff.
Yeah, and they have Jen Pusateri in the trailer, which means she's in the documentary. She's a very intriguing character.
Is that who that was?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, so we'll have to see. We don't know. We know these trailers
And they're done.
Yes, and we know how these trailers get put together. We know that some of the footage in the trailer might not even be in the documentary.
Yeah.
You never
Or
know.
we may not be able to hear it when we actually watch a show on HBO. So, sorry, this is my other rage-inducing moment of the week. I had to watch True Detective, the last one, 2 freaking times. And I still don't know what happened when the 2 old guys are sitting there talking about the dogs and whatever the hell else they were talking about. So, I hope they turn this one up. That's all I have to say, Rebecca.
I have gotten so many tweets about that. People are like, I thought it was me. My favorite thing was somebody was like, I thought I got a raw deal on this Bose sound bar, but it's actually just HBO. So I'll repeat it again. HBO, before the Adnan Syed documentary airs, get your shit together when it comes to mixing audio. Please get your shit together. I'm sure this is probably why I can't get screeners from HBO, right? Because I keep bitching about their sound.
Yeah,
actually, I don't think that's
horrible. It's horrible. Because I think something really significant happened in True Detective last week, and I'm probably going to have to go read one of the recap reviews to find out what it was, because I still don't know what happened. But something really big happened when they were talking. Like there was some big revelation. Something happened. That's why that guy's drunk all the time. I don't know what it is though.
Laura, you sound like an old person, like the worst kind of old person.
I can't hear what they're saying.
Tell me, did you watch this week's episode?
We haven't had time yet. We're watching the Bundy tapes.
Well, then you won't know, because it was so infuriating, because you finally know, oh, look, here's his partner. Oh, he's alive, and he's living with all these dogs, and he's drunk. And, but I don't know what else happened.
Well, I guess we'll have to put the closed captioning on, right? If only there were a way to read along with the video.
You shouldn't have to fucking do that with HBO. Yeah. All right. Well, moving on. Let's get to our first review of the evening, shall we?
Sure.
For our first review of the show, we are talking about The Dropout, the podcast that focuses on the con perpetuated by the founder of a biotech company that made big promises around the business of blood tests.
Please begin.
This is the testimony of Elizabeth Holmes, going on the record in San Francisco, California at 9 o'clock.
This is the story of the rise and fall of the world's youngest self-made female billionaire.
Did it concern you that a number of tests weren't working on Theranos' devices?
Look, I know that we made mistakes.
ABC Radio and ABC News Nightline deftly build the story of a massive bio-med tech fraud in The Dropout, and host Rebecca Jarvis paints a surprising portrait of former Theranos founder and self-made billionaire Elizabeth Holmes. Now, there's just a few episodes out of The Dropout, but we will be discussing some plot points. So if you want to stay spoiler-free for The Dropout and just hear our thumbs up or thumbs down review, we will put a note in the show notes about where to go for that. The first thing I want to talk about, Kevin, is this is a podcast made by a TV network.
Mm-hmm. Well, also a radio network.
Yes. But
it's a news organization.
News organization that makes news a different way.
It's ABC Radio.
And?
ABC News Nightline.
Correct. And this is but we do even know from radio news, commercial radio news, that the sound is usually very different from what we're used to in narrative podcast audio.
Yeah, have a slightly different sensibility.
That's right.
Yeah.
But this, hallelujah, actually sounds like a podcast made by podcast people, does it not?
It does. Some of it actually kind of sounds like a podcast made by television people, which is not a knock. It sounds very good. I think what I hear is, like when you have like multiple people being interviewed and you're sort of on location, I very much am hearing the audio track of some video.
Right.
And it makes sense if this is ABC News Nightline, that there is probably some video companion to all of this. There's a lot of resources thrown at it, and knowing after having our discussion last week about the synergistic relationship between platforms, that there's probably also, going to be some TV special about this case. But the podcast side, solid.
Yeah, the narrative is great.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca Jarvis is a great host. And I just think that part of it, and I just want to say, after kind of dissing Bagman, which to me sounds like a poorly mixed version of the Rachel Maddow show, this sounds like a podcast. It made me very happy, and I'm enjoying listening to it on that front. Now, Toby, corporate fraud stories and true crime lovers, do you think the two mix?
In this case, yes.
Why is that?
I guess there's enough sensation to it that I think you can be drawn into it without necessarily being all that interested in that kind of crime. There's big personalities. The con is just ridiculous. It's just so much bigger than life, I'm sure there's going to be a great movie about this someday. I think there's a lot of sort of financial crime things that would not lend themselves to a good podcast, but I think that the cast of characters here and just the brazenness of what she was pulling off, I think, at least for me. I think it's really compelling.
Some of the most interesting stuff, and I think the show just sets it up so well in terms of her image building, her very intentional image building to perpetuate this fraud. The image is very important. But Rebecca Jarvis goes to Stanford, where Elizabeth Holmes went to school and then famously dropped out, following in the footsteps of other famous billionaire entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg.
What was your first meeting with Elizabeth Holmes like?
So Elizabeth was brought to me by a person who'd been the former president of Panasonic, saying to me that she was this brilliant girl and she had this wonderful business idea. The idea was simply that she was going to make a microfluidic patch to sample blood to test for infectious organisms and then deliver antibiotics through the same microfluidic channels. Now, that's not possible because the antibiotics are not potent, and I don't want to go into the details. But I kept saying to her, I'm sorry, that doesn't work.
How did she respond to the criticism?
Just kind of blinked her eyes and nodded and left.
Laura, what did you think of these scenes at Stanford? We hear the dean is the one who first tells us that Elizabeth Holmes changed her speaking voice.
Oh, that was my favorite.
Tell me what you think about that setup and sort of hearing about what she used to be like versus what she was like when she became famous.
She was really a master manipulator, in my opinion. And listening to this, it reminded me of, it was like the tech biomedical version of Dirty John or Dr. Death in terms of that type of person that managed to fool everybody around them. But starting early, it was almost like she was really creating and curating this image of who she was to the people around her. And now looking back, I mean, oh my God, when they ever said, and then people who knew her were like, that's not her real voice. I'm like, oh, now every time I hear her voice, I want to scream because it's so fake. Now it sounds so fake.
Right.
Well, yeah, we're one small, no vials of blood here, just one little prick. I'm like, shut up, you freaking fraud. But it was just listening to it, really masterful in terms of the way. And you have to wonder, did she believe what she was setting up? Or was she just so out of touch with her own abilities that she really thought this is something she was going to be able to do?
Well, that is kind of a really interesting question. And I think that it's revealing in some of those early Stanford scenes. When she went to college, she asked that dean to be her mentor to whatever. Then she was like, nope, no, I'm not going to do that because you're a kid and the thing you're talking about won't work. That one professor.
Oh, yeah.
And her solution was
that stuff doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And her solution was to go to a whole different professor so that he would give her what she wants.
I introduced her to a couple of venture capitalists that I felt would sit down and chat with her about her vision and her aspirations.
So how did Elizabeth Holmes convince you to become a director?
Didn't take much convincing. I was very intrigued by her vision and felt it would be a really interesting proposition to be engaged with. She asked me if I would be on her board, and I said yes.
So Channing Robertson, that second professor, Kevin, calls Holmes. He says she's like Da Vinci. And then he puts his money and he joins the board of her company. And then we also kind of hear, this whole idea, all these Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates types, they made it so cool to be a dropout that even academia is now kind of buying into this.
But she poached a lot of folks from, from Apple, and she envisioned the company that she wanted and tried to set that up. The only problem is that the product that they had didn't work, and they did not admit to that, did not try to, I'm sure they tried to improve it and tried to make it work, but they were never honest with investors or the public or their clients like Walgreens that they're getting $1 gazillion from, that this piece of science fiction doesn't work.
She cared very much about what it looked like, though.
She did care what it looked like.
That's one of the UX to be good. The UX for the thing that didn't work. I do want to get back to the voice thing for 1 second because I do think the way, Laura, I think you're right. The particular manner in which she changed her voice, when you hear it and you know she's faking it, is absurd. But women, especially like famous professional women, I mean, it's not uncommon for women to get voice coaching and to work on their voice. One of the most famous people to do so is Oprah Winfrey, who's talked many times about how she's lowered the register of her voice and she's really like dug into like this. I'm doing my like, it's not an Oprah impression, but when she talks about it, she talks about really sinking into but it's not the same as going, so anyway. It's just not the same. It's a whole different kind of thing. It's like a disguise that she's putting on. It's really incredible.
Because it's so fake sounding.
Yes.
When you know it's fake and then you listen to it, you're like, oh my God, how did nobody think this was off?
Let me ask a little bit about you. Do you own a TV?
No.
Why not?
I work all the time, and I'm basically in the office from the time I wake up and then working until I go to sleep every day.
Toby, what do you think about this image building storyline about Elizabeth Holmes?
Well, I think like a lot of the stuff, you wonder what was the initial intention. Did she actually think like she had this invention that was really going to work? And when did she realize that it wasn't going to work? And when did the fraud come in? Because the reason why that would be interesting to know for me is because this whole image building thing, again, seems to kind of kick into a different gear. They tell that story about how she used to wear like Christmas sweaters. And then somebody mentioned who, the inspiration behind Steve Jobs wearing those ridiculous turtlenecks, and she had to go and get that designer stuff. You get the sense that she had a pretty strong idea about what she basically wanted to be like, but then the point at which she started to sort of make shit up to make her seem that way. It was that connected to the, device fraud, or was that kind of a separate thing that she was doing? Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but she also used people to create the image. She had to talk about the 4 bodyguards that she walked around with. And then, of course, she installs that number 2 at the company, Sunny Balwani, who's also secretly her boyfriend and a super dick to everyone.
And did he have any qualifications in the lab testing business?
He did not.
Or in pathology or anything like that?
Not to my knowledge.
So Sonny begins showing up to work every day at Theranos. Like Elizabeth, Sonny had his own kind of uniform, a white button-down shirt, jeans, and expensive loafers. He always smelled of cologne and became known for his flashy tastes.
And it's got 2 cars with vanity plates.
Douchey cars.
Sonny drove 2 cars, both with vanity plates. A black Lamborghini with license Vita Vici, as in Veni Vidi Vici, a reference to Julius Caesar's I came, I saw, I conquered. And a Porsche 911 with plates that paid homage to Karl Marx's anti-capitalist manifesto, Das Kapital. He was a very striking figure around the office, but his presence confused a lot of employees, like Michael Craig, a senior software engineer.
I always wondered why he was there. If she was actually held this vision of really impacting the world, I was like, why did she pick him then?
Now, one of the things I was really interested in this story, I'm super interested in like workplace stuff, especially that's a huge part of the national conversation right now. And they mention on the podcast about the company reviews on Glassdoor. So, of course, I got into this whole Glassdoor rabbit hole and started reading all these employee reviews. And it was like, position, scientist, rating, 1 star, reason, we're making stuff that doesn't work. My boss is a bully. I'm afraid to come to work in the morning. Like all that stuff is there on Glassdoor, like from 2014, 2015, it's all there.
Yeah.
You can read it. But we do hear, Kevin, one really tragic story about sort of the human cost of working in those conditions.
Oh,
and
right.
I do think that people do tend to underestimate. We talk about workplace bullying and like difficult, but I think people really underestimate the impact it can have on a person's psyche when they are afraid at work every day or when they are just continuously beaten down at work every day. What did you think about that storyline about Ian, the man who died by suicide after working miserably for Elizabeth Holmes for so many years?
Oh, it was very sad. It was very sad for his wife. It was so articulate and brave in telling his story. That is the sign of a shitheel.
Yeah.
You want to be inspired by a boss, especially if this is somebody who's like, has this vision and is leading a company, it's just not right to be bullied and to be, put down. I mean, especially it's because some of it is because of the severe character flaws in leadership, but it's also because they realize that these emperors have no clothes. This product doesn't work. And the people who understand that and could say that need to be neutralized or they need to be contained. And so, he was facing a deposition where, he either narked out the company or he perjured himself.
Right.
And
he needed to have a job. He was afraid of not having a job, which so many people I think can relate to.
Right. Didn't he have an illness too?
Yeah.
The detail that stuck out at me was that after he died, the company didn't send any flowers.
That's right.
I mean, been there 10 years.
Right.
The only correspondence that they received was essentially a threat letter.
Now, Toby, we heard the other story from another former employee. By the way, these people wrote the most awesome resignation letters. Who hasn't wanted to do that at some point in their lives? Who, a year or two after he left...
When I quit this show, it's going to be fucking epic.
ran into Elizabeth Holmes at a drugstore of all places while he's picking up his Vicodin after being hit by a car on his bike, and he's battered and bruised and bloody.
You only need one blood drop, too, at that Walgreens.
And she's in line behind him and, just starts talking to him as if they just saw each other the week before, being like, oh, you should really think about coming back to the company.
She probably said it like that, too.
What did you think about that story, Toby, and this sort of whole narrative about what it's like to work for a monster?
One of the things I thought about is that she behaves in a way that I think we're more used to hearing, asshole men behaving.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, one of the things that might have made her interesting, I guess, is that it's this sort of attractive, sort of all-American looking blonde woman who's just a complete freaking tyrant. There was a book called, is the CEO a sociopath or something like that? And the answer to that book was a hell of a lot of them are. And I think this is just another case, but a case writ large where her scam was that much better, that she was getting billions instead of millions.
Well, just one final thing I want to talk about that persona. In the podcast, we hear from her former employee and former Apple employee, Anna Ariola, who walked away from 15,000 Apple shares to go work for this company, which was all fake, about why it was she walked away from Apple to work at Theranos.
We had a great conversation. It sounded like an incredibly compelling mission that was basically really thinking about the betterment of humanity. She's incredibly passionate. She's very energetic, very expressive with her hands, and has a very unique, distinctive voice that you just kind of get drawn into what it is that she's conveying, and her conviction and her belief really shines through. She really did believe she was changing the world, as did we.
So, Laura, we hear there she's dynamic, Elizabeth Holmes. She's attractive. Mm-hmm. What role do you think Elizabeth Holmes' attractiveness plays in her ability to con so many smart people?
I hate to say this because you hate to admit something like this, but I think it played a role. I mean, you look at her, aside from her creepy voice thing that's going on, and she's attractive. She seems earnest when you look at her. She seems enthusiastic. She seems very excited about what she's doing. And there is something to be said for that when you're looking for a job and you're looking for something that you want to get behind. If you get behind somebody that presents like that, you feel like you're getting on board with something that's going to change the world, which is exactly how she was portraying herself. But she is cute. So I don't think that hurt the situation.
I don't think it hurt either. All right, well, let's do what we do. Let's tell our audience, should they check out The Dropout, this podcast from ABC Radio and ABC News Nightline? Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down so far for The Dropout?
I'm going to say thumbs up. I've seen some criticisms out there from people that say this is just so elementary, it's so basic, I can't believe it's not more detailed. I think those are people that have read the book and already done a lot of, research or, know about this case. I didn't really know that much about this case, so I find it really interesting. They've got really interesting people that they talked to that worked for her. So I would say take a listen.
What about you, Toby Ball? Thumbs up or thumbs down for The Dropout so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically with all the points Laura just made. I think it's really good. I've really enjoyed it. I didn't know much about it, so like Laura said, if you know a ton about it already, you may think that there's nothing new there. But I think it's very interesting and well done, and I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of it.
Yeah, I'm also going to give it a thumbs up. I think it's just really beautifully put together. I'm enjoying the storytelling. One thing that's really hard to do that I think people underestimate how hard it is to do is to explain science or to explain a financial fraud or to explain a crime like this. It's very different than explaining a stabbing. It's just extremely different. And this podcast does a very efficient job saying, like, here's what the tech was supposed to do. Here's why that would matter to so many people. Here's why this was revolutionary. Here's why so many people were interested. Because you hear, like, who cares about your type of blood test or whatever? But then you look at the healthcare market and you realize that, like, tens of millions of people are getting blood tests every day and care a whole lot about what that technology looks like and feels like and what that experience is. And the podcast just did a really wonderful job explaining that, a really wonderful job explaining the stakes. The character development was efficient, great, well written. So I'm really enjoying it, and I do plan to continue listening after this thumbs up review. What about you, Kevin?
I'm also a thumbs up. I like the way it's put together. It's some solid journalism, but it also is an interesting narrative. It's told well. I'm always interested in a true crime podcast that either talks about a different kind of crime or talks about it in a different way. White-collar crime, financial fraud. We don't get a lot of those kinds of podcasts. I mean, there was Ponzi Supernova, but, in this realm, it reminds me a little bit of The Social Network.
Yeah.
Let's tell the story about this brand name that you knew something went wrong. Like Laura, I didn't really, follow a lot of this in the news at the time, so it's a news story to me. I think she makes a very good villain. If you're wondering about, like, how did Elizabeth Holmes sort of become the person that she was? I think the problem is that she never got herself a FabFitFun box to like really improve her outlook on life.
It would have changed everything.
It would have changed everything.
Really, it would have.
You know what? If she had done the under eye bag things that I did, this never would have happened.
That's true. The 2019 FabFitFun Spring Box is on sale right now. FabFitFun is a seasonal subscription box delivered 4 times a year with full-size beauty, fashion, home, fitness, and wellness products for just $49.99. Now, we all got the editor's box, right? They do like these sort of special boxes.
Packed full of goodies.
Right. You guys got your boxes recently, right?
I did. As you recall last week when I was on my chocolate-covered espresso bean binge, I got some lovely little prep cups that came in my FabFitFun box.
That's right. Look, I got the FabFitFun box.
The box itself
right
is so freaking cute.
Right.
I have recycled all those boxes. I'm using them in my Marie Kondo reorganization of my house.
What a good idea.
They're really nice to look at.
They're so cute.
Right. People are like, what are in the box? Okay, for $49.99, what do I get? Well, you get
stuff.
Tons of stuff.
Yep.
Good stuff. But look, the value is about the spring box, about $350 worth of stuff. And like, how do you know that? Well, I have in the editor's box here. They actually send you a card with telling you like what is in your box and listing the retail price, so that you can see any one of these particular items here are worth the box here. What did we get? We got in this box. We got the Summer and Rose crossbody handbag.
Yep.
And
beautiful little purse.
Yeah.
Clutch and strap, by the way, which I love, and a beautiful wallet, and those beautiful bowls, which, by the way, have come in very handy. You know what this box is?
What?
This box is like the Showcase Showdown on The Price is Right.
Oh, yeah.
You get it, and there's tons of stuff in it. That's what it's like.
Yeah, so you got the wallet, the botanical hand cream that we got, the Way of
bubble
Will.
mask.
That was nice.
Uplift essential oils, right? Yeah. The hydrogel eye mask.
Well, I'll tell you, they had these lovely, I think they were charcoal infused under eye bag sort of things.
From Black.
I just sent you a picture. Those things were awesome. After like Super Bowl weekend, we're eating a bunch of crap food and drinking all weekend, stuff that probably isn't super healthy. I looked awesome on Monday after wearing, and they were comfortable to wear too. They were very relaxing.
Kevin, the retail value of this box was almost $400. This is incredible. It is really fun. It's fun to unbox.
Yeah, so sign up today at fabfitfun.com and start getting the box for a life well lived. And of course, like once you, I'm going to put this back, once you take everything out of the box, apparently, according to Laura, it's perfect size for a cat to sleep in.
It's a super cute box.
It is. Yeah. My cats love to play in it because the top comes down so they can play hide and seek with it.
Yeah, I'm going to put this away here. Hurry up, though. These boxes always sell out. If you use our code CRIME, you'll get $10 off your first box. That's CRIME for $10 off your first box. That's over $200 in retail value. It's time like over $300. That would be only $39.99 with that.
It's a good deal.
That promo code, right? Go to fabfitfun.com and use our code CRIME to get $10 off.
What else you got, Kevin?
Well, if you have a cold-blooded killer in your house, like Laura Bricker does, that will just go out and kill rodents, with and not even care.
With a plum.
Yeah, like a boss. Then you need the kind of kitty litter that can keep up with your cat's
you do.
extremely busy lives. The worst part...
Cats extremely busy.
Oh, my God.
lives.
Cats are so busy, right? They're out there taking meetings.
They are very, very busy in my life.
They're going out to dinner.
Yeah. Zelda had to go to the vet today. It was a very busy day for Zelda. It was actually, I was telling the vet today about the cat litter that we have because, we have 3 cats. And so they want you to always take a litter box sample. I'm like, well, how do you know which cat it comes from? Luckily, all my cats are healthy because the cat litter changes colors with this litter if there's something going wrong with them that you should tell the vet about. So that was one thing off the list. And we were in and out of the vet in 10 minutes.
Right, so depending on what color the kitty litter changes when the urine is there, that can give you some indication about the cat's health. So you're right. So you knew going in that was very likely this was going to be just a routine. But if something happened where it got a weird disease from killing that mouse, like hantavirus or Ebola.
Your cat litter would definitely change color.
It definitely
if your cat
changed
had
color.
Ebola.
Yeah, Pretty Litter is great. It has next level odor protection, and it uses these super absorbent crystals that actually trap and conceal the odor and moisture, so there's no smell, there's no mess, no gross cleanup. And this kitty litter gets shipped right to your door in a small, lightweight bag that lasts an entire month. Make the switch to Pretty Litter today by visiting prettylitter.com and use promo code CRIME for 20% off your first order. That's prettylitter.com, promo code CRIME for 20% off. prettylitter.com, promo code CRIME.
Crime. Moving on. Netflix continues its trend of bringing us murder and chill with Conversations with a Killer, the Ted Bundy Tapes. Using present-day interviews, audio recordings, and a goldmine of archival video footage, acclaimed director Joe Berlinger lets much of the Bundy story get told in the notorious serial killer's own words.
He didn't look like anybody's notion of somebody who would tear apart young girls.
My name is Ted Bundy. I've never spoken to anybody about this. I am looking for an opportunity to tell the story as best I can.
A person of this type chooses his victim for a reason. Possession, control, violence.
Now, we are going to be discussing significant plot points in Confessions of a Killer, the Ted Bundy Tapes. So if you don't want to be spoiled, or if you just want to hear us give our thumbs up or thumbs down review right now, check out the time code listed in the show notes. Now, this project, as we learned initially in the first episode of this 4-episode series called Handsome Devil, two journalists, reporters Stephen Michaud and Hugh Ainsworth, get a deal through their publisher, through Stephen Michaud's publisher, to get the opportunity to speak exclusively with Ted Bundy in exchange for helping him prove his innocence in this case. Laura Bricker, would you ever consider this deal, even if you thought you might get a great book out of it?
No. Well, if I thought it was somebody who was actually innocent, I don't think I would have actually thought Ted Bundy was innocent. So, yeah. And he scares the shit out of me, so I don't think I would have done it.
Yeah. So, Kevin, the interesting thing about this series is, we're sort of promised at the beginning this audio tape thing. Mm-hmm. And frankly, that worried me because I'm like, well, we should look at photographs while somebody's hitting play on a tape recorder. But the audio tape thing is just a setup because there's a whole lot of video and a whole lot of awesome video in this documentary. What did you think of all these archival pieces of news footage, archival pieces of courtroom footage? You know, Ted Bundy walking around. You're able to see everything that they're talking about.
Yeah, no expense was spared in purchasing the rights to archival footage. Even like his Republican activist days where he was accused of some dirty trick, and there's an interview on a local TV station. I mean, it was like, wow, this was some fantastic finds for an archivist to pull up everything related to Ted Bundy. And there was a lot of it. Yeah, I was kind of wondering whether or not, we're going to have a lot of shots, close-ups of...
the same photo over and over again?
Well,
Weird reenactments?
No, of like the cap stand and the cassette spinning and the pinch roller and all the... let's look at every part of the cassette player. Here goes the counter going through, and like we have to watch that forever. And there was a little bit of that, but primarily, what he was talking about there was footage. And there was a couple of, I don't think like the footage of the Boy Scouts marching and stuff was like his actual troop, but there was a lot of stuff that was actually of him. So, the problem that we sometimes run into and talk about is like, well, what is the B-roll you put on the screen, because it's TV, to hide all of the edits
as the glue to paste it together.
And give you something for the eyes to go along with the story. This didn't have that problem because it had a wealth of archival film.
Era appropriate. Even the stuff that wasn't, talking about the Boy Scout troop, it was era appropriate footage of a Boy Scout troop.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And even one of the things that struck me is even the present day two-ways, they rented like a baller 1970s, like mid-century modern, appropriately furnished house. They interviewed all the people in all the same setting. So even when they would go to one of those interviews, just because of the way it was lit and because of like the wood paneling in the background and everything, like it was appropriate. It didn't pull you out of the story and be like, okay, we're in 2019 now. Just one follow-up question quickly for you, Kevin. We see a lot of TV reporters doing live shots, reporting in this. What do you think of the style of TV reporter in the 1970s versus what we're used to today?
Good evening. Convicted Utah kidnapper Theodore Bundy has escaped from an Aspen, Colorado courtroom and remains at this hour the subject of a manhunt.
Guards waited outside the room, but Bundy was alone inside when he decided to open that window and jump the 25 feet to the ground. In fact, you can still see the indentations in the grass here where he landed. From here, Theodore Bundy decided to head for the hills.
I was thinking, nobody knows how to hold that microphone.
It's so earnest, though, right? It's so straight.
It is. You also have to remember that was shot on film, like in a canister, and had to be developed, and so
cut with a knife.
Yeah, so a lot of like take three. Like you couldn't really do that. You had to kind of like go with it. So the different interviews and stuff. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of like, okay, I'm gonna cut around here and do this from the other side. So it was really interesting to watch.
I like the woman walking the street and saying like, Ted Bundy walked down this way, and then
they still do it. They just have wireless microphones now, and there's a little more lipstick.
There was one towards the end when I think the jury was out on one of his trials, and he's wearing like I think a tan leisure suit, and he's kind of like half perched on this like desk
at the
in
bar.
the court.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I was like, it doesn't have the effect I think he was hoping to
That's
have.
where Keith Morrison learned how to be a TV journalist, was from watching these guys,
leaning
right?
In.
All the leaning.
I thought you were going to say watching Ted Bundy.
No.
No, I love the pool room where all those folks were. I mean, that's sort of later on, and this whole scrum of reporters from different outlets. Yeah.
Ted Bundy is found guilty of all 7 counts of the indictment. That includes 3 charges of attempted murder and 2 counts of first-degree murder, a crime that is a capital offense in the state of Florida, a crime for which
they had like one satellite truck, and that was a big deal, and everyone was going to have to feed. It's like, we have this window, and like, for 15 minutes we got to feed all this stuff, and then after that we can't use the satellite anymore, and everyone's got to be ready to go, otherwise you won't be on in Albuquerque.
It was a super interesting aspect of the documentary, seeing how journalism was done then.
Yeah.
Really interesting. So Toby, I don't know about you, but one of the things that this documentary showed me was how little I knew about this super famous and iconic serial killer story. For some reason, I thought I knew stuff about Ted Bundy. I didn't really know anything about Ted Bundy or the story of his murders, his MO, all the wacky stuff that he did. I just knew that he was a handsome guy who killed a lot of people. Did you go into this knowing a lot or not a lot about Ted Bundy, and did you learn anything?
I knew very little, and I learned a lot. And a couple episodes again, I was saying about how I hate serial killer stuff, which is still true, but I think this is just a really well done series, I think. And there's enough going on in the Bundy case that's not just kind of lurid and sad. I mean, there's plenty of that too. His story and his sort of persona are more interesting than most of these types of things are. The way he escaped, the first time when they were in Utah or Colorado, and
that was
basically people were just letting him walk around. So he's like, oh, I guess I'll jump out the window and run into the woods. And it was that's the kind of thing that a 10th grader would think he could do. And he actually got away with it.
That's right.
It's just, it's insanity.
So Toby, you're actually just speaking of something that I wanted to ask you about also, because, when we talked about hating serial killers, you talked about how they get glamorized, and sort of the serial killer story has led to a bunch of really shitty books being written in the genre. And there has been criticism about the Bundy story, and especially about the fictional version of this story that the same director is making with Zac Efron starring as Ted Bundy, which I have more hope for now after seeing this documentary. But the sort of critique of we're glamorizing this guy, we're making him seem like he's just handsome and charming, and that he was able to charm people. And then I'm watching this and I'm like, but in this case, that's all fucking true.
Well, I think one of my few criticisms of this is that I think early on they kind of make the point that he's got this reputation, but the reality is he went to University of Puget Sound Law School, which, I don't know anything about, but apparently it's not as good as University of Washington Law School, which is where he really wanted to go. And that some of this stuff is kind of overblown. And I think part of it, and some woman at the very end, one of his little groupie watchers at the court, is he's not the kind of person you would expect to be a serial killer. And I feel like some of it is he's graded on the curve of who other serial killers are, who are more obviously
creeps,
socially impaired or, low lifes or whatever. He's able to kind of present himself as relatively well educated, and he's not slovenly or anything like that. That seems to be enough. But if it was more, if he was actually a poet or some other kind of walk of life, I don't think he would seem as exceptional as he did as a killer.
We have this vision of serial killers as being sort of antisocial and kind of weird and withdrawn, but there is also the charismatic killer or serial killer. When I was watching Bundy, I was taken aback at his resemblance to Charles Manson.
You mean Crazy Eyes?
Well,
he had the crazy eyes.
Maybe, yeah, a little bit. All right, but without the swastika tattoo and without the long hair, if you think of Jeffrey Dahmer and sort of his affect, and that sort of serial killer, Bundy was charismatic in this way, and then he was funny, but he's also awkward, right? And you can kind of tell, knowing what you did, it would come out when he was frustrated. You could see that, but he was actually really good at playing the part of it. Normal person, where a lot of serial killers cannot do that.
Well, I want to actually play a tape that speaks to that. One of the craziest things that happens in this documentary is near the very end when he is convicted of multiple murders, and the judge almost apologizes to him for the kind of person he's become.
This court, independent of, but in agreement with, the advisory sentence rendered by the jury does hereby impose the death penalty upon the defendant, Theodore Robert Bundy. Take care of yourself, young man.
Thank you.
I say that to you sincerely. Take care of yourself. It's a tragedy for this court to see it's such a total waste, I think, of humanity that I've experienced in this court. You're a bright young man. You made a good lawyer. I'd love to have you practice in front of me, but you went another way, partner. Take care of yourself. I don't have any animosity to you. I want you to know that.
Now, Laura, one of the things that strikes me as super interesting in this documentary, and they do a very good job illustrating it, they don't beat us over the head with it, but it just comes up over and over and over again, was the limitation on law enforcement in the 1970s. They had no tools, no communication, no databases, no fax machines. It's one thing to say there were no computers, but they also couldn't even tell when somebody was carrying a fake driving license. There was no way for them to know whether driver's licenses were real or fake. There was no way for them to even decide who was to blame when somebody escaped from jail twice. What do you think of that? Sort of that stark limitation we see on the ability of police to track people down and solve crimes.
Yeah, that was really one of the things that jumped out at me as I was watching this was because I'm like, in today's world, would this guy have even gotten as far as he did in terms of being able to kill as many people going undetected? No. But you're watching this and it's like he's moving among states. It seems like, when you're looking at this, the evening news is where people are actually getting their information. But they're not getting the evening news in different locations, with that same news. So when he gets arrested in Florida, I just couldn't even believe he gives them a fake name and they have these stories in the newspaper and stories on the TV. Who is the mystery man?
I was like,
and
how is that news?
Yeah. And I'm like, how does nobody know who the fucking mystery man is? He just escaped from this other courthouse and he's been running around and they're like, oh, we don't know who he is. And I'm like,
story.
Wow. I was like, that is just, so that was really, really interesting to watch that play out. Also very frustrating, but also at the same time pretty amazing when you think about the fact that they actually did figure out who he was based on the lack of technology and lack of, sort of modern investigative tools, that it was, his girlfriend that was like, something seems, the fact that based on what she said, based on what they were able to figure out with credit card receipts where he was, that they were able to figure out that it was him, based on, even though they had no idea who he was when he was in Florida, that they were able to actually prove their case. That was amazing as well.
Well, they were finally able to get around to opening the mail that had the wanted poster in it. And I love how they had the
that they tacked up in the town square.
Yeah, and it was like, be on the lookout
for the post office.
Yeah, well,
they're like, oh shit, I didn't recognize that guy.
It was like, be on the lookout for these fingerprints.
Yes.
They had his photo and all his fingerprints. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this fingerprints?
Exactly. The fingerprints were on the wanted poster. Someone would walk by a post and be like, that's the fingerprint I saw on the wanted poster. It was a little weird. But the array they did show of those 16 photos of him or whatever, he really does look very different with small changes to his appearance, parting his hair on the other side, or even just a couple days of stubble he made. He did do a very good job at altering his appearance without doing a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and guys usually can't do that. Women sometimes can do that, very change of hairstyles and whatnot, but usually, guys, it's the same guy, he just has a beard.
So I want to ask sort of a darker question.
Yeah.
So one of the things that struck me, because I just didn't know a lot about this case, first of all, it's fucking bananas that he killed all those women in Florida after escaping from jail in Colorado. I never knew that. I just thought Ted Bundy killed a bunch of people and then got arrested. I didn't realize he'd been arrested after kidnapping and killing people and then escaped and then killed a whole bunch of other people.
Time. Yeah.
And you kind of really do hope then that sheriff's office did actually fire that guy whose turn it was to watch him, because he actually went and killed more people. But the darker question I have, Kevin, is that, we hear over and over and over again from profiler types about how serial killers develop a signature, an MO, a this, or that. Ted Bundy had a very disorganized sort of pattern. He'd pick people up on the beach. He picked up 2 women on one day at one point off that beach. He had this thing where he'd break into people's houses and hit them with logs. This wasn't somebody who was doing things in a way that was clean and precise. Like his killing of those 2 sorority women in Florida, he broke into that dorm and basically tried to kill every girl in the hallway.
He stayed there a long time.
He killed a 12-year-old.
That was the thing that really struck me, is that he was in that sorority. He'd attack one woman, rape and kill her, and then move on to another one. He wasn't boom, in and out. He was there, and
then he went
stayed.
down the street and attacked somebody else.
Yeah.
That's weird, right? That's not the story we're used to hearing.
Right.
Yeah, because he breaks the mold, especially when he killed the little girl. Yeah. I was like, that doesn't even fit the pattern here. What is that about?
Yeah. And also the multiples on the same day. Yeah. I mean, the thing that we've learned from all the shitty true crime books that have been written about serial killers is that they kill and then days pass and then they feel the need again and they have to do it again. And it's oh, what do they always say in those terrible TV shows? He's escalating, right? Ted Bundy did not escalate. He went out the gate doing 60, it seems, in his killing. Yet he also had this weird long-term relationship with this girlfriend that he kept on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, what would you feel, how would you feel if you suspected that Ken was secretly a serial killer and the police were describing him and you were like, that sounds an awful lot like Fireman Ken? Would you do what his girlfriend did and call authorities and say, you should look at Ken? He might be this serial killer.
I probably would. And then I would call you guys at Partners in Crime Media and be like, let's make a podcast. And I'll wear a wire.
Before you turn him in, take this tape recorder.
But the girlfriend, the one that really got me, was like, okay, so I felt bad for her, was the first girlfriend, Liz. But then the one who goes to court that's his advocate and then marries him and then has sex with him somehow mysteriously in the jail and has a daughter. And they have this whole little family thing going. That was something I did not know about. Can you imagine being that poor child now?
Yeah.
Who's now, an adult. But and that the guards were like, yeah, they knew we were having sex, but whatever. I just can't imagine how that all went down.
Toby, what did you think about how at the end of the documentary, they, I think, made a pretty good point in showing us the bloodlust that existed around Ted Bundy's eventual execution and the brutality of the method of execution of the electric chair. The documentary didn't shy away from that, and I don't think they invited us as the audience to feel that glee that some of the people in the documentary, even the present-day interviewees, felt talking about this execution.
There were thousands of people outside. You could hear them inside, even in the inner confines of the prison. Burn, Bundy, burn. Burn, Bundy, burn. And they were setting fireworks off. I looked at Ted, and I said, you hear that out there? And he goes, they're crazy. He said, they think I'm crazy. Listen to all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a death penalty opponent sort of personally, but I do think it's a solemn thing. I think, if the state's going to kill somebody, regardless of what that person did, it's not a party. So, and I think when they showed the witnesses coming out, it was that one prosecutor who comes out with his arms in the air.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of growly, sort of pissed off prosecutor who they're talking to in present day. He's like, that guy was like a person-sized piece of garbage and and all that stuff. And he was like, yeah, we tried him again. He gets 2 death penalties. That's, twice the chance that he doesn't get away. He doesn't weasel his way out or whatever it was he said. But he came out and I was like, gloating about that just seems kind of unseemly, regardless of who the person is.
Yeah.
And I realized, I'm sure there are people who will disagree. But the idea that there's these frat boys drinking beers and selling novelty T-shirts and stuff is, that does not speak well.
There's a lot that's kind of incredible about this story. I mean, I just know that, the thing that I want for my daughter is that for when she falls in love, that the man of her dreams proposes to her while she is on the stand testifying on his behalf in his second capital murder trial.
Right. Yes. And, that was his way of distracting the jury, making himself seem human.
You can't execute me on my wedding day.
That's right. It was really interesting to see him in court and to see him try and to see that judge to an extent fall for it a bunch of times, with the lighting in the cell and so forth. I can't read to study up on my case. But then in the second trial, none of that worked. It all fell flat. He tried to do the same thing again. It just didn't work.
I have to say, he carried that off, except for that one really disturbing part where he was having them recreate exactly all the horrible things that had happened to the body. He was a chameleon. I mean, he really did seem like a lawyer.
He was good at playing one. He was basically playing a TV lawyer, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was really,
That woman lawyer, though, was just he was doing everything wrong.
Right.
She said everything that he was doing was benefiting the prosecution.
Right.
But he looked good doing it.
Right.
And then, of course, his post-conviction lawyer is trying to get him his execution stayed by saying he had poor representation. That representation, of course, was himself.
Yeah, right.
Which you have to wonder, was Ted on board? Or he probably would have been on board with anything at that point because he didn't want to die. But, I bet he would have argued the point of him not being a great representative for himself.
Would he have argued that well?
Who knows?
Isn't that the issue there?
I don't know. He wasn't Nixon Republican. He was campaign worker, right? That's another fact that we learn about him in the documentary.
And a Mormon.
Yep. We don't want to get our Mormon audience mad again. But Ted Bundy was, in fact, a Mormon. Okay. So let's do what we do. Let's give this Netflix 4-part series, Conversations with a Killer, the Ted Bundy Tapes, the Crime Writers On treatment. Would you recommend our listeners check it out if they haven't yet? Thumbs up or thumbs down? What is your review, Laura Bricker?
I'm going to go with thumbs up. It's a well done overview of the case. You've got really interesting tape of him actually talking. Lots of really interesting video from the time period. It's disturbing. It's not an easy watch at times, but it's 4 episodes. I always say that when it's not too long. So you know what? It's worth watching if you're interested in the case.
What about you, Toby? Thumbs up or thumbs down for the Ted Bundy Tapes on Netflix?
I'll give it a thumbs up. I mean, I feel like that director could make a really good documentary about a hell of a lot of subjects. I mean, I just thought it was really
and he has.
Well put together.
To be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know I don't know his body of work. There's a lot of stuff in this. I mean, it's not quite at the that O.J. Simpson documentary level. It is a portrait of a time as well as of Ted Bundy. And so, despite my general distaste for serial killer stuff, I think this was a quality piece of work, and I would recommend it.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a big thumbs up. I really enjoyed it, and I will tell people if they start watching it and they feel like it's not going, along quickly because of the audio tape portion and the interview with the one reporter, like, stick with it because there's a lot here that gets really interesting. I just want to point out one difference because a couple weeks ago we were talking about that other Netflix documentary, Abducted in Plain Sight, and I made the point that it's not an investigation, it's not a what happened, it's a here's what happened. That's what this is too. Except there's a lot more here, a lot more sources, multiple law enforcement sources in this documentary, reporters, you have people who are lawyers, people who are cops, you have the psychologist, the George Wong of the Ted Bundy story, to use an SVU reference, who interviewed him multiple times, who gives his take. So much footage of Bundy himself, almost no filler. I just think this is really well done as a here's what happened documentary. I learned a ton, and that's what elevated it for me. So I'm giving it a big thumbs up. What about you, Kevin?
I'm also a thumbs up. The name Ted Bundy comes up on a list of serial killers, but I have to admit I didn't really know much about his background and about the nature of his crimes and his really interesting story. I mean, who knew that you could escape twice?
From that jail in Colorado? Apparently you can.
Yeah. So props to him, I guess. He was very charismatic, and I have to say, he was also, in a way, likable. And that makes him a very compelling person, worthy of examination alone. But the idea that they have all of this film and these audio tapes of him speaking, in his own words, I think makes it a really good look at probably an underrepresented criminal figure in American history.
You just said Ted Bundy was likable, and you've been giving me shit forever about saying Sheila from Wild Wild Country is actually likable. He killed 30 people, Kevin.
I know, but I'm not getting T-shirts that say Team Bundy.
Neither am I.
Yeah. So I'm going to be a thumbs up on the Ted Bundy tapes. At the end, after the execution, and that's not a spoiler. I think we already know he's dead, right?
Yeah.
When they were, about to take him out, the body was under that sheet. You know what I was thinking?
No, I don't.
Oh, God.
I was just wondering to myself.
Don't do it.
Was it possible?
What?
Could that have been a Brooklyn sheet?
No, it could not have. It could not have.
It could not have been a Brooklyn sheet?
It could not have been a Brooklyn sheet.
Okay. All right. In case you're joining us, this is Crime Writers On, and we're talking about our good friends over at Brooklyn. And you spent a third of your life
by the
on
way,
sheets.
they are our good friends, and let's hope they forgive us for that appalling ad transition because they are one of our favorite sponsors on this show.
That's why they love us, our bad transitions. They were founded in 2014. Brooklyn is the fastest growing bedding brand in the world.
Wow.
Their mission is to make 5-star hotel quality sheets that are affordable and easy to order, and they've got over 20 different colors and patterns that you can mix and match. I have to say, I'm not having a good time sleeping on my Brooklinen sheets lately.
No?
Yes, because somebody in the house, and I don't want to name names, but
Somebody?
she brings our dog in to the bed.
That's right.
And it's that time of year, like, where there's sand, like, outside, so it's all everywhere. So there's sand all over our Brooklinen sheets.
Do I bring him, or does he just jump up like a goon?
Oh, he jumps up. But nobody says you have to bring him under the duvet.
And hold him like a teddy bear?
Yeah, hold him like a teddy bear, so his paws are right on the Brooklinen sheets.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So, yeah. So, fortunately, we have more than one pair of Brooklinen sheets. So, we can, again, have the luxury of the Brooklinen sheets, which are the best sheets we've ever owned.
They are.
The dog is great, but please, our dog does not deserve Brooklinen sheets.
No?
No. In fact, I'm starting to wonder if you do, Rebecca. I feel like you don't know me at all.
They're very comfortable on my broken leg, Kevin. Are you sure you want to give me crap? I have a broken leg.
No, I guess not. I guess we're just a mess.
We are.
We're a mess in bed. My Brooklinen sheets are the best, most comfortable sheets that I've ever owned. And now it's time for your upgrade. Brooklinen.com is giving an exclusive offer. You get $20 off and free shipping when you use promo code CRIMEWriters.
Crime Writers.
At Brooklinen.com. That's a new code. Brooklinen is so confident in their products that all of their sheets, comforters, and towels come with a lifetime warranty. I guess sand doesn't
count.
That's probably on me. The only way to get $20 off and free shipping is to use promo code CRIMEWriters.
Crime Writers.
At Brooklinen.com. That's Brooklinen, BROOKLINEN.com. Promo code CRIMEWriters. Brooklinen. These really are the best sheets ever.
Ever. What else you got, Kevin?
Well, speaking of being cut off, Amazon Prime Video and executive producer Jordan Peele
Please tell me this is not going to be about Lorena.
bring you the new docuseries
Yes!
Lorena.
I'm actually really glad it is. I'm really excited for that.
A Sundance official selection that shares Lorena Bobbitt's side of the story and investigates the headlines and press coverage 25 years later. Do we have to explain who Lorena Bobbitt is?
Keep
Does
going.
everybody
No,
know?
but I'm all over this. I am fascinated by this case.
So am I.
I was living in Northern Virginia, like, when it happened. I think she was from Arlington.
Wow. Did she throw the penis
Yeah.
out on your lawn when she drove by?
Yeah, and I packed it in ice just in case.
Well, I think the case is super interesting because there's a whole new perspective on it now, given the way she was treated and given the way he was treated.
And he was an abuser.
Yes, he was an abuser. She was a victim.
That was the whole deal.
That was the whole deal.
But, I think we understand so much more of it now. Guilt or innocence would come down to whom the jurors would believe.
Right.
But what did he do to make her do something like that? It was a true battle of the sexes. What it meant in 1993 is not that different than what it means today in 2019. Beneath the tabloid headlines and talk show jokes was something far more complicated. A scandal you know, the story you don't. Watch this new 4-part docuseries, Lorena. It comes out February 15th on Amazon Prime Video.
Now it's time for my favorite part of this podcast, a little something I like to call the Crime of the Week. This week's Crime of the Week was submitted by listener Kevin Carroll via Twitter. I believe this is Kevin's second time sending a winning pitch to our podcast.
Congratulations, Kevin.
Congratulations, Kevin. You've now officially become a producer on this stupid show. It seemed like a scene from the worst rom-com ever. Passing motorists in York County, Pennsylvania called the cops when they saw a man running across Route 30. He was being chased by a naked woman calling out, "I love you," and "I'm not crazy." Police said 47-year-old Dante Hedgepeth met up with high school sweetheart Carrie Sue Smith at the Super 8 motel to get reacquainted. At some point, Carrie Sue began professing her love, saying she and Dante were going to have kids and start a life together. Troubled by her clinginess, Dante told the cops this, quote, freaked him out, and he left the room.
Yeah, I would.
Fueled by true love and cherry-flavored Grey Goose vodka, Carrie Sue ran after him in nothing but blue socks. She said, quote, "Something inside me told me to go after him."
I'm just a girl.
I think that something
in
was
front of a
the
boy.
cherry-flavored Grey Goose vodka. The pair face a variety of charges, including drug possession, public drunkenness, and indecent exposure. We can't offer Carrie Sue legal advice, but we're pretty confident saying he's not that into you. So, panel, here is my question for you. What are you so passionate about in your life that you'd think nothing of going for a naked run to get it? Laura Bricker, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, this is so easy. I bet you guys could answer it for me. My cats.
Oh.
I love you, Rocky. I'm not crazy, Rocky.
Like if they were outside and a mighty mouse was trying to eat them, I would just run out there in my underwear and save them.
Come back.
I thought you were going to say the white chocolate cranberry scones from the...
Yeah, it's got to be...
Underwear's not the point.
Got to be full frontal.
Well, maybe the white chocolate raspberry scone, if there was one left, I might wrestle for that too.
All right, Toby Ball, what are you so passionate about in your life that you would think nothing of going for a naked run to get it?
Do I get to wimp out of this like Laura and say I'd run out in my underwear?
No.
Cherry flavored Grey Goose vodka.
I go for the plain kind myself. What about you, Kevin? What are you so passionate about in your life that you think nothing of going out for a naked run to get it?
You know, I got to tell you, dude, like when Tom Brady comes by with that Vince Lombardi trophy, I tell you, kid, I'm going right after him. I can put my lips right on that trophy. I don't care. My winner can hang out. I don't care. You all can see it. I don't care. Me and Tom, we're gonna do this.
Is it his cheat day?
This cheat. Tom Brady and I, we're gonna eat some avocado ice cream, have a walnut. It'd be great.
He only eats that on his cheat day, Kevin.
On his cheat day, you can have 4 almonds. Giselle's really great, but I don't care. I'll run right out. I'll show you my nut sack. I don't care.
All right, we should probably end it on that note, please. But before we do, Laura Bricker, do we have a cat of the week this week?
So I was all ready to make Tracy Pfeiffer's neighborhood cat Mo cat of the week because he's orange and he got snipped this week.
All right, so you're basically pointing out who the loser is. Sorry, Tracy. You're a fucking loser.
But then,
see that rug you're standing on?
I want us all to send some good Crime Writers on vibes to one of our favorite Rage Walker group members, Angela Buster. Her poor, much-loved dog, Philip, has a condition called collapsing trachea.
Oh.
And it's as bad as it sounds. He survived heartworm treatment as well, and he's a rescue dog. His original owners loved him but were elderly and ended up in hospice, and their garbage, ding-ding, quoting Patrick Hines, children abandoned him in their backyard. So he's got a lovely home, but let's say some prayers for his collapsing trachea, this poor little dog.
I will say I have corresponded with Angela a little bit in the last couple weeks. She's having a hard time. Oh. Yes. She's one of our favorite listeners. She sent me an email, and I emailed her back, and she's wonderful. And although I don't usually love dying or dead pets for Cat of the Week, for this listener, I will make a hearty exception.
Yes.
All right, Laura
We chase
Bricker.
after the cat naked in blue socks.
If people want to reach out to you, Laura Bricker, and pitch their living, healthy animals to be cat/dog of the week for next week, only so that I can stop crying after we tape the show, how can they find you online? Specifically, how can they find you on Twitter?
At Laura Bricker.
And Kevin Flynn, if folks want to reach out to you and tell you that you should give me a break for wanting to sleep with the dog when I have a broken leg and I just want some damn comfort, how can they find you on Twitter?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
And Toby Ball, folks want to reach out to you and I don't know, also say they didn't know a whole lot about Ted Bundy before they watched the confession tapes. How can they find you on Twitter?
At TobyBallNH.
And if you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Crime Writers On. And I encourage you strenuously to join the amazing community on our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. We also have a regular old Facebook page. Go to our website, sign up for our newsletter, and yes, support this show on patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia, and you will get access to the Balls Deep Dive Book Club podcast and Laura Bricker's Rage Walking True Crime Fitness Fun Group, and the spin-off show created by yours truly and Kevin Flynn called Married
with Podcast.
Podcast. Our theme song was performed by the New York Ska Jazz Ensemble and used with permission. This show was recorded in the Yoga Loft above the Bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, the closet in our basement that Kevin has escaped from twice. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later. Toby Ball, starting with you, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
Oh, Jesus. What did I have? I had like 3 bites of grape nuts before I had to run out the door.
That's very small
I had a
bites.
meeting in Lowell.
Oh, you were like a kid in a movie whose mother lays out a full breakfast with like eggs and pancakes and everything, and they just grab the toast and run out the door. Sorry, Mom, gotta go.
No, it wasn't anything like that. There was no big breakfast. I just like grabbed the only thing that I could think of And I ran out the door, and then I had this like half-rotten banana and a cup of coffee when I got to my meeting.
Was there milk in the grape nuts? You just put them in your hand and throw them back like nerds.
Like nerds do?
I had the same question. I had the same question.
Oh, no, yeah. No, I washed them down with some water.
Oh, God.
That's
Just,
fucking
no,
gross,
I'm just
Toby.
joking. I put in milk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Partners in Crime Media.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.